Courageous princess, fierce warrior, legendary superhero. On the mystical island of Themyscira, a proud warrior race of Amazon women thrives, shielded from the corrupt world of man. But a betrayal leads to the escape of Ares, the god of war, and Amazon princess Diana must capture him before he unleashes global chaos and destruction. Welcome everybody to another exciting episode, another edition of A Week in Geekdom here on YouTube. We are continuing our Week of Wonder here at A Week in Geekdom on YouTube. The live-action Wonder Woman set in the DCU is technically the first live-action appearance, but it is not the first Wonder Woman movie. That honor goes to the 2009 version of Wonder Woman. I have here the Blu-ray for it. And it's actually one of my favorite DC animated movies. I rewatched the whole thing in order to prepare for this video and to see if it still holds up, and I have some issues with it. Now, as usual, movies like this take certain liberties. I am very critical of the runtime in these DC animated movies if you've watched any of my reviews of them in the past. And this isn't the exception. Running in at 74 minutes, right there, that is my first major problem with it. Simply put, there's way too much ground to cover for so little time, and it shows, especially in the first act. We get introduced to everything at such a lightning pace that by the time the second act begins, you're like, okay, I guess we're on this adventure now. Literally, you get this small exposition scene with the Amazons, and then it transitions into modern Themyscira with Diana. You see her as a young adult. Then you find out that Hephaestus made this mirror to cast over Themyscira, and there's like this dogfight above, and you see Steve Trevor and eventually fighting some unknown enemy, and then he crash lands in Themyscira. It just steamrolls from there. Actually, I don't want to spoil everything in this movie if you've never watched it. It's really continuity free. This sort of seems like a DC universe where none of the other superheroes exist, because by the final act I was like, yeah, this is weird that no world response is happening for this major crisis event that is unfolding on the Washington Monument. This movie is filled with a very interesting cast. The main two protagonists of this story, Diana, Wonder Woman herself, and Steve Trevor, are voiced respectively by Carrie Russell, surprisingly, and Nathan Fillion. Now, Nathan is no stranger to animated features and lending his voice to many characters, but this was a very weird Steve Trevor. It felt like I was watching a Hal Jordan-esque take on him. Just a very odd choice. And of course, Carrie Russell really surprised me at first, and now that I've rewatched the movie after so many years, yeah, it does get a little bit of getting used to because of her tone of voice. It's not what you're used to when you're listening to Wonder Woman. You know, the character she has a particular tone of voice, and Carrie does a really commendable job. I really liked her take on it, but it's just odd at first. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's something soft-spoken but yet reassuring about her voice as Diana. Now, the plot, Ares has escaped, and Diana is obviously dealing with the whole Steve Trevor thing and meeting men and man's world, if you will. Ares' plan is very simple, if you know the character, if you know your Greek mythology, but he is played so villainously by Mr. Alfred Molina in a spectacular way. I love this interpretation of Ares. I don't like the look of the character at all in this. It's one of my worst versions of Ares, in my opinion, especially that kabuki mask that happens later on. It was a little bit too weird for my taste. With this animated feature is that everybody is so sarcastic and they're a little bit of an ass throughout the whole thing. Even Wonder Woman at some point. Steve Trevor is the most surprisingly a-hole-ish out of everybody. I would have wanted a more cleaner presentation, but then again, you got to remember, this is a movie that sort of tried out new things. This was back in 2009, if I do remember correctly, and so far we had only gotten the awful Superman Doomsday movie and the New Frontier adaptation. So this was the first movie for something that wasn't Superman or Batman or that kind of stuff, and it really did break ground in that it presented a realistic, mature, somewhat gritty animated take on a beloved comic book character. Now that may throw some people off because yeah, there is a lot of blood and killing and violence in this thing, and some mild swearing that may throw hardcore purists away from this movie. But you know what, it's a modern kind of loosey-goosey adaptation where you're just having fun in a very kick-ass way. The fights and the animation quality in those fights are actually really well done, really spectacular. Everything has a great sense of fluidity compared to more recent DC animated movies that look a bit static, in my opinion. This looked fantastic. But yeah, it's a little bit too brutal for its own good. I think it could have scaled down a little bit more. Some of the characterizations are a little bit way off. They could have dumbed those down a bit. Maybe not be as sarcastic and snarky in their comments, especially like I mentioned, Steve and even Hippolyta and all that stuff. They could take a chill pill, in my opinion. And actually, my favorite scene in the whole movie, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. My favorite scene in the movie is actually the final sequence, the ending, where a certain character shows up at the end. It looked like the beginning of a second adventure that we're never gonna get, unfortunately. But man, that was awesome. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. What's your favorite DC animated movie? I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a Batman movie. And thank you once again for liking, subscribing, and commenting, and doing all the awesome stuff that you guys do. As always, you can follow me on your favorite social media platform, from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and many more. Just type "A Week in Geekdom" and I'm there for you guys. Alright, I've got more cool stuff for you guys, so stay tuned. Let's keep the hype train going with our love for all things Wonder Woman. I will catch you on our next video.